this out there. And I think the topic that I'd love to address is how this might be affecting, what your cause and your purpose for Voices for Children, and how the kids are being affected by the slowdown, and
Sure.
in the meantime, and what people can do and how they can get involved. And, I think that it's worthy of explaining it at a real basic level. And then, Leanne, I would love for you to maybe jump in about the training, about how you're passionate, why you want to do it. If I recall, you've done this before. Yeah.
I looked into it in Georgia for a short period and it just didn't work out. And then we moved and now it worked out.
Okay, so great. Did you have, before this COVID, did you have any opportunity to jump into any and get to know any kids yet?
I do have a case, a kid. We have not been able to meet face to face, but we've been doing Google Duo calls once a week.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. So it's we've had some good, not a long call, really, but yesterday we called and talked for probably 30 minutes, which is really good. So I was excited about that.
Well, we might touch on that too. So okay, great. And if anybody else joins us, that's great. And if not, it's still going to get big exposure. So I'm confident with that. So excellent. Well, thank you, ladies, for being here. I appreciate it. And I hope you guys brought your Java. I know that's where I went. I went to go get mine all loaded up.
Yep.
So, and Jessica, are you in your home office or are you in someplace else today?
No, I'm at home today.
I understand. It seems like my routine, I actually am getting up and out sitting here a little earlier than I did. I used to be in the office by 8:30 and now it's an 8 o'clock kind of deadline. So my timelines have moved up. I think what's sacrificing is my exercise. So I'm trying to get myself motivated to do it in the afternoon.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. We're all a little out of sorts.
Yeah, absolutely. All righty, well, let's get started. Okay, so I have on the call with me today for Coffee Connection, I have Jessica Muñez with Voices for Children, and I have Leanne Rappel, and she's also with Voices for Children as a CASA, and I'm just super excited to have both of you here. Thank you so much for being here. And I think what I really wanted to let our audience know today was what's going on with what is Voices for Children? We've talked about it briefly in the past, but what is the organization and how might it be affected right now, and how our audience can get involved if they want to help? So Jessica, how about we leave with you?
Sure. So Voices for Children is the court-appointed special advocate, or CASA, program for Riverside County. So what that means, Liz, is that we have, as you know, the very unique privilege and responsibility of training and supporting volunteers who are appointed by judges to advocate for kids in foster care. Children in foster care are children who have been removed from their homes due to abuse or neglect. And what surprises a lot of people is that when that happens, a judge is assigned to oversee the family and the case and make really critical decisions about everything that's going to happen next. And so that's where our volunteers step in. Our volunteers get to know kids on a one-on-one basis and provide them with caring, consistent adult support, while at the same time also having a platform to speak up and share with the child social worker, other professionals on the team, and even the judge at court hearings about what they come to understand the child's needs to be.
Well, that's wonderful. So you're coming alongside of a kid that's in the foster system and already feeling a little bit out of sorts because he's away from his home. And everybody that is helping him is always in his favor, whether it's the social worker or whether or not it's the attorney or whether or not it's the judge. They always are looking out for this child, but not on that real intimate level that a friend, a CASA would be. Is that correct?
That's right. Our social workers, attorneys, and all of the other dedicated professionals in the child welfare system absolutely have the child's interests top of mind. One of the real challenges that our child welfare system faces is that all of those other professionals also are trying to do that very same thing for many, many other children at the same time. We in Riverside County, as well as other agencies across the country, really struggle with having high caseloads and asking our social workers and others to really have to do a lot all at once. And so what CASAs are able to do, because they are volunteers, is singularly focus on one child or one sibling group at a time. And then that information that they learn through that unique relationship can really augment the information and perspectives that social workers and others have when they're making their decisions.
That's wonderful. Well, obviously the court systems are shut down right now, and I guess there might be a tentative date that things are going to open up. So what that means to some children is they're either in a home that there's a plan to move them or not move them, or they're separated from their siblings at some time. And so all of this could play a role in just a little bit of tension and nerves, and the unknown is scary for kids, for all of us. And so tell me, how is COVID playing a part in delaying things right now for you?
So understandably, our courts are closed with the exception of emergency hearings. In addition to that, in order to promote their health and well-being, children in foster care, like all of us, are staying at home and social distancing. Some of them are using distance learning for the very first time. And this is particularly complicated when we're talking about young people who've already experienced trauma in their very short lives. And so some of the measures that we're taking to keep them healthy and well, and rightly so, also interrupt some of the other things in their life that have become sources of comfort, like going to school, seeing their friends, seeing their favorite teacher, having access to regular mental health and support services. And even though our educational partners and others are doing their best to try to make sure that we're still serving kids well during this very, very unusual time, all of those disruptions create a sense for our kids of yet more instability. And so that's what really concerns us at Voices for Children. And that's why, particularly during this time, having that connection to a CASA volunteer, even if they can't see each other face to face, is still incredibly valuable.
Oh, absolutely. Well, on the call with us right now, we have Leanne and we have Jim, and both of you folks are CASAs, if I'm not mistaken, right? And so you're probably experiencing some things with the children that you connect with. Either Leanne, you just mentioned that you just started with one kid, so you really didn't have a lot of history in trying to get to know that child before this happened. And then Jim, you might have a long-term child in your care. So tell me, how is all of this affecting that relationship, or how have you let it blossom more as a result of this situation?
Well, Liz, I'm not really connected directly with the child anymore. The last one was about a year ago, November, but I've been around a long time and done a lot of kids. But I go to the group meetings monthly and listen to the CASAs and how they're dealing with their children, which is pretty impressive. And Jessica, to your credit, you've done a great job of managing this challenge, because it's got to be tough not to see the kids and still try to develop a relationship with them. And I know a lot of them have different ideas on how to get to the children and talk to them and develop a relationship over the phone or with Skype or FaceTime, whatever. That's the toughest it's going to get.
Absolutely.
It's just not a one-on-one deal.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Jim. And one of the things I do want to add is one of the things that we really value at Voices for Children, and that is a hallmark of our program, is that all of our CASAs are assigned to an advocacy supervisor who is a paid professional member of our team who has expertise in some area of child welfare. We all come from very different backgrounds and disciplines, but having a professional alongside our volunteers to coach and guide them is always valuable. In this particular circumstance, I think it's been even more so, because as a team, we've been able to be thoughtful about how to make sure we're supporting our CASAs well, so that they in turn can advocate for their children well. So thank you, Jim, for your kind words. It's a team effort, most definitely, and providing excellent support to our CASAs is certainly one of the things that we strive to do every day.
You know, Leanne, what's been your experience? I mean, you're in the trenches with them, so.
So it's been interesting. I was, you know, it's new to me. I just got assigned my child when all of this happened, so we have not had a face-to-face. My advocacy supervisor has been wonderful. We catch up at least once a week, probably a little bit more than that, and that's usually on the phone, but we also email or text back and forth. So I have a ton of support with her, which is wonderful. I have been able to video chat with my girl a few times now, and it's been good. You know, at first she was a little giggly and didn't quite, you know who I was or what was going on, but you know, and as it's gone on, you know, the calls have gotten better and more informative. I had a wonderful call with her yesterday, and we can work on some school things and everything. And we actually Monday have a team meeting, to get a game plan, because she was also fairly new to her placement, and there hasn't been a lot of things happening on her case because of the virus. So there's a plan, and it's moving forward, even though it's virtual. It's still going to be a huge help to me and to her. You know, ultimately, she is the goal for this, is to get her all the things that she needs to be successful.
Jessica, I have a question. Leanne mentioned that she contacts her supervisor once a week. I'm curious, I know in the past when the virus wasn't around, that sometimes connections with the supervisors and the volunteers was a bit of a challenge, and they weren't as often as what we'd like. And has that changed much?
So our CASAs are expected to contact their supervisor at least once a month, and certainly, as you know, Jim, encouraged to be in more frequent contact than that when they are new on their case, or when there is something going on that we can support them through. One of the things that we also understand is that during this crisis, all of our daily schedules and routines look very different. And in normal times, if there is such a thing as normal, a lot of people are surprised to know that many of our volunteers work full-time or have other responsibilities besides their volunteer role. And so, of course, just like anything, it takes a little bit of fancy footwork sometimes to make schedules line up and to have those good conversations. But I really credit our volunteers with understanding that we are navigating some highly unusual circumstances. And there has been a real desire to, I think, have candid conversations with their supervisor about how they can get creative, be flexible, continue to support their child and be present for them, as well as continue to participate in team meetings and school meetings and other things that are moving forward virtually. So I really applaud our core of volunteers and our staff who are alongside them.
That's awesome. Quick question, in a regular setting, do the children that are under the CASA program, do they ever connect together as a group? Do they have gatherings or anything like that?
A couple times a year, Liz. The real focus of our CASA program is to create space for children to have that specific connection with another adult. And so the major energy and major focus of our team is to do everything we can to nurture those one-on-one connections. There are a couple times a year where we do have small gatherings that bring CASAs and children together. So last year, for example, we had a holiday gathering. That's an annual tradition. It's an opportunity to help CASAs acknowledge that season for their children, because it can be a very lonely season and time for some of our kids. And last year, for the first time, we also had a back to school party with a backpack distribution drive. We handed out school supplies, had lunch and games. It was a chance for CASAs to talk in a very positive way about the beginning of school starting, Of course, given the circumstances, it's a little tough to know right now if we'll be able to do that this year. But there are a couple very special times of the year when we're able to bring their kids and CASAs together.
That's awesome. Well, as I listen, I start to spin ideas, and I know that in the business community, we're doing more and more of these Zoom meetings here. And I know that at a education level, you know, some of the students are gathering their classmates that they miss, and they're coming together on a Zoom call. And then I believe there's a function where they can break out in smaller groups and maybe talk about something. So the group might have a CASA in it. And just, I don't know, I thought if we aren't able to move things along at start of school the way we have, that might be a great opportunity to pull faces together on a Zoom call, just so they don't feel like they're the only one. So that might be kind of interesting. But love this technology and able to get in front of you guys right now. It might not ever happen. So this is incredible. Let's talk a little bit about volunteers and the needs that the organization has. What can we do to help you at this time?
We always need community members to step up and pursue becoming a CASA volunteer. That's true in any circumstance. It's especially true right now. We anticipate that when kids return to school, particularly, but also return to other community activities, that the number of child abuse hotline calls will increase. The reason for that is that when kids are at home and not coming into contact every day with adults outside of their home, many of whom, like teachers, are mandated reporters, we tend to see hotline calls drop. When kids reconnect with those trusted adults outside their home, we tend to see hotline calls increase. So from a big picture perspective, at Voices for Children, we're always thinking about how we can serve more kids, but we're acutely aware right now that the need for us to be able to serve more kids will probably grow in the coming months. To do that, we're continuing to offer our information sessions and training, which usually would be in person. So information sessions are a 1-hour opportunity for people in the community who are contemplating becoming a CASA volunteer to come to hear from a member of our staff exactly what the volunteer role entails, what expectations we have of them in terms of their service, but just as importantly, what expectations they should have of us in terms of the service and support that we provide. The next step is to have an interview, and we're doing those via Zoom as well. And then all of our CASAs complete 35 hours of pre-service training. We have transitioned that training to an online platform. And I want to say a special kudos and thank you to our 2 classes of trainees who have come along and gone through the training in a virtual manner. So what's most important to us is that we continue to ensure that we have a pipeline of caring, open-minded, dedicated adults who are properly prepared to be able to serve our kids.
So Jessica, in the training, as far as training is concerned, how do folks like Leanne get their required training hours? Is that through a Zoom program, and is the contracted people still doing that on Zoom?
So our new CASA trainees are still completing their 35 hours of pre-service training now using an online format. So we call it Advocate University, and that program is now completely online. In addition, for our current CASA volunteers, we're continuing to offer small groups, and we'll also be offering continuing education training online as well. That doesn't mean that when things sort of return that we won't resume offering in-person training, but for right now, we want to make sure that we can continue to have great CASAs who are prepared to serve kids.
Is RCC involved in that?
So it's my understanding many years ago, RCC was involved in Advocate University, but for the 5 years that Voices for Children has been the court-appointed special advocate program in Riverside County, we have used the curriculum that Voices for Children has developed, and our staff instructs the training.
Okay.
That's great. So is there a cost, besides your time, is there a cost to a person who decides to volunteer?
No. So when people go through the in-person training, we ask that they consider making a $50 donation to help with supplies. That's never required. With our virtual training, we're not even asking for that right now. We understand that there are lots of demands on people's time and resources, and the most important thing we're looking for is a big heart and a willingness to make a commitment. So if this is the right time for somebody who has perhaps a little more time at home than they're accustomed to work through that training with us, then we absolutely want them to reach out.
Oh, I love this. That's great. Well, this is super information. So I think, Jim, you've had, excuse me, recording. So Jim, you've had a few wonderful overview stories that you shared when we were at one of our last meetings, that how touching it was to be a CASA, your experience with that. If I put you on the spot, do you have any stories that you can generalize through about what it meant and how long maybe you shared with one child and how it made a difference?
Oh gosh, there's lots of them. I mean, it's when you get to know a child and spend time with them and try to understand the depth of their challenges mentally, and I was never connected to any of the kids that had physical disabilities, but mostly mental challenges, either cognitive or behavioral. And you develop a sense of empathy for those kids and try to understand and help the best way you can. I'm not a trained psychologist or therapist by any matter of means, but just listening and trying to gather their thoughts and how they think and why they think that way was very enlightening to me. And it's a connection that never goes away. One of the last boys I had has siblings that were separated from him, and he was not allowed to see them while he was in foster care. And I've connected with his sister, who is an adult. She's 21 and out of college, and I think still lives in Riverside and Florida. She's got a connection there somehow or another. She goes back and forth. But I Facebook with her, and the boy that passed away, his aunt and I have talked lengthy conversations, and now one of her daughters has friended me on Facebook, and we talk. These go back 13, 14 years. So it is a lifelong connection that you don't have a lot of control over. It's there. If they want to have that relationship with you, it's there. All you'd have to do is accept it and continue the relationship. But it's interesting to watch the families expand and grow outside of the foster care system and see what effect that's had with the family.
Wow. Leanne, a question for you. Thank you, Jim. What prompted you to do this, to become a CASA?
So I had time after relocating back home to California to dig my feet into something. And I've always, kids don't have a voice. They kind of get left by the side, and the bigger picture of parents dealing with their issues and things. And so I thought it was important to help somehow. And you were the one that actually connected me with Voices for Children. And when I kind of looked into it, I thought this was something I could really get behind and hopefully make a difference. I was a little nervous at first, just because, like Jim had said, a lot of us are not trained in any specialty of social services or psychology or, anything. We're, just regular people that want to help. I was thinking it was going to take a ton of time. It does not. In the beginning, it takes a little bit more time as you're developing, court reports and paperwork and just trying to figure out how it works. But the help has been wonderful with the supervisors. So I'm really looking forward to really getting into doing this. So I'm excited.
That's fabulous. Well, that's great. Well, as we wrap up, folks, I'm just curious if there's one thing that you want to say to our audience today, one ask that you might have for our audiences.
For me,
Sure.
it takes some courage and a little bit of a thick skin to do this, and but don't ever underestimate the effect you might have on any child. And it's more than just the child that you're assigned to, because obviously they live in homes with other children as a rule. At least in my experience, most of them have been in group homes. So there's 4, 5, 6 other kids that are impacted with your presence when you go into that house. You always talk to them, you get to meet them, talk to them a little bit. So it's not just one child that you're affecting. It could be a whole house full of them.
Wow, that's terrific.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Thank you.
So I
Sue.
think the biggest thing is getting the name out there. I think there's a need for a lot of volunteers that, people need to realize it doesn't take a lot of time. You don't have to be a professional in any particular thing. It's just being there and making a difference, listening, guiding, and doing the best that you can for your child. So.
Yeah, well put, Leanne, well put.
Absolutely. Jessica?
We need people. That's the fact of the matter. And as Leanne and Jim pointed out, Voices for Children is well positioned to provide the training and the support. What we are looking for is someone to come who has an open mind and a big heart and a willingness to embrace the training and the support that we offer, so that they can really be the voice for a child who needs them very, very much. And there's lots of kids that do. So we'd be excited and grateful to meet and talk to anybody who might be interested in seeing if becoming a CASA would be a good fit for them.
That's wonderful.